Hey everybody, my name is Brock. Thank you for being here for another night of ReEngage. I'm here with a very special guest tonight, Tara Wiedemeyer, and you might recognize that name because she's quite famous, but also she is the co-host of the Mindful Marriage podcast, the podcast that we host together. And so if you hear a little sarcasm or a little, what would be a better word for it?
Quick wit.
Quick wit. It's because we're used to talking to each other. And so that's why we're here today. But Tara, you are a licensed professional counselor.
I am.
And so she's the expert in all the things that we do here at Hope Fellowship. And so you have a new place up in Prosper, or maybe if we see this video in the future, it's not new any longer, but it's called the Wellness Center.
Yes.
And so it's a great place for people to come, for all kinds of therapists there. So congratulations on.
Thank you.
She's the boss, so she's kind of a big deal. Yeah, it's kind of cool. So, but anyway, we want to talk to you guys a little bit today about something that might happen in your marriage. I don't know if it's ever happens to you guys. It happens in our home a lot. But,
like once.
Yeah, like once. Conflict, when things kind of get a little out of control. And so, Tara, help us kind of understand maybe as we approach that and kind of some better things that we could do to avoid those conflicts, because I hate it when things get like super out of control. We're yellers in our house, and so I don't like it when that happens. And so help us kind of do a better job with that. So.
Okay. So for today, I want to kind of talk about conflict in a way that normally I don't think it gets talked about a lot. When you look at marriage, like podcasts or talks, or even like the way we sometimes even talk about it in counseling sessions. And so kind of looking behind the scenes of like why we do what we do in conflict, and how we can kind of hopefully get in front of that and change the way things are so it's more productive.
Okay.
So real quickly, conflict is not a negative thing, or it doesn't have to be a negative thing. It's actually very healthy. It's productive. It brings things into light. It produces change and awareness. But the way we go about it, it can be super harmful, hurtful, negative, volatile. And so just trying to tone that part down so then we can have the communication.
So conflict itself isn't horrible, but just typically the way how we handle conflict can be horrible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like the combat in conflict is what is optional. Conflict is going to happen. And so a lot of times with spouses, that's the person you've signed up to do life with. And so if you see that person as against you or not on your side or a threat, then you're not going to want to have a conversation with that person. You're not going to want to work things out or be intimate or just even be in the same room with them maybe, And so if we look at the brain and what's happening in the brain during conflict, I think it will help people to know what to do in those moments a little bit better. And it does take practice. It's hard. But so I'm going to show you guys like a model of a hand, or a hand model of the brain. And this is from Dr. Dan Siegel. Love him. But it may seem oversimplified or elementary, but I think in things like this, especially things as important as our marriage or just relationships, we need to go back to the basics. They're the basics for a reason. And so if we do that here, I think it will help kind of like, we need to make sure we have all the building blocks in place and that they're sturdy so we can move forward and build on that. Yeah. Yep. So if this is your brain, okay, so this is your spinal cord, and this is your limbic system and your brain stem. These things work together.
So the hand is the brain.
For the purpose of this talk.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure I understood what's going on here. And
then this part right here is your cortex, your prefrontal cortex. So this is basically, and it kind of looks like a brain if you look at it. So that's why it's a really good model to understand. But what Dr. Siegel does is explains like when we flip our lids, like basically we get agitated, we have panic, we freak out, we get into like an argument, our lids get flipped, right? So we're not being rational, we're probably not being super kind, we're not as aware, logical, that kind of stuff. So what happens is this part of your brain, or the downstairs brain, we're going to call it for now, and this is the upstairs, okay?
So this is your brain.
This is your brain.
Can this be your brain on drugs?
This is your brain on drugs. I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
No, this is what we want, actually.
Yeah, okay.
So this part of your brain is not as sophisticated as this part, and it basically controls your fight, flight, or freeze, right? Okay. So that's kind of God's gift to our bodies. It's an alarm system. And so if you're truly in danger, truly under attack, you want that part to take over, because you're not going to think, you're just going to react in the way that's going to help you survive. Mm-hmm. And so, but we don't want that going on every day, all day long, if we're in just a regular situation or at work or talking to our spouse. So we want this guy to be in charge, okay? So the cortex or the upstairs brain.
Because if he's not in charge, when something small maybe happens, or we're not perceiving it as small, we start to act in a very dramatic way.
Yeah, you act like you're being like
survival kind of almost way.
Stabbed or under attack, yes.
Yeah.
So everything kind of blows up out of proportion in that moment. And so, but this is the part of our brain that like helps us be logical, rational, controls impulses, calm down fear, emotionally attuned to somebody, be compassionate, empathetic. So you want that part in charge.
And we can think about all the things that we kind of are learning about how to treat someone
right.
better.
It helps us slow down and be like, ugh, maybe I shouldn't have said it like that. Or like, maybe they just said that because they've had a bad day and it's not really about me or toward me, you know? So it helps, it keeps everything kind of in check for the most part. Now, you can still disagree and have conflict, but it's not going to necessarily turn into an argument if this guy is in charge. Okay? So, but we all flip our lids, okay? And so when we do that, it happens for 1,000 different reasons. But if this part of your brain is getting poked or, you know, it's firing in that part of your brain from whether you had a stressful day at work and you're agitated and things just keep going wrong. It could be based on adverse childhood experiences. It could be stress, anxiety, true fear. It could be, you know, something in you got triggered because of something your partner said or shared with you. And so if that keeps getting like poked and poked and poked, then this is going to lift and you're going to flip your lid.
Flip the lid.
Yeah. So when you flip your lid, you're in combat, so to speak. And that's all your body recognizes.
And that's when we're saying things that are horrible. That's when we're going too extreme with statements and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you may know that like, oh, this is a little awkward and I'm not getting along with my spouse, but like they're a rational human being at that point and you don't feel threatened or scared. Mm-hmm. And if this happens, all bets are off.
Okay.
So that's when you see spouses screaming at each other or throwing things or, you know, saying things that are hurtful and they don't necessarily mean, but they're not in control of that.
Okay.
And so we want that not to occur, especially in marriage. And so to keep this guy down and hugging our downstairs brain the way we want it to, we've got to first be aware. So even knowing like this is happening, I think is vital. And so as soon as you realize you're getting triggered or you're starting to feel like attacked or defensive or whatever, you know, if you want to communicate that to your spouse, that'd be great. But like in that moment, at least with yourself, like, hey, this is happening, name the emotions, and then start like trying to allow your body and your mind to like decompress and relax, which is hard to do in conflict. So if we want to keep this guy online, in charge, and the CEO, like it's intended to be, then we need to know that this is even happening, have some awareness around it. Sometimes people are okay, couples are okay with staying in the same room and doing that and allowing things to kind of decompress. Maybe they talk, maybe they take a break. Some couples even pray in that moment, which is it's wonderful, but it's also a very vulnerable place to put yourself when you don't really maybe even like the other person. And so, but if you can do it in the same room together, fantastic. If you can't, it's okay to take a break. But
so really what you're saying is when we start to feel a little irrational, or that emotion starts to take over, we feel like we just want to attack, we feel attacked or whatever, that we're probably not going to operate in a really good way as we respond to someone. So we've got to do some things, because right now we've flipped our lid. And so we've got to start to do some things to put the lid back on. So those moments that we feel really overwhelmed, we've got to find some lid putting back on items. Would that be?
That is exactly what we call it, lid putting back on items.
And who's the therapist here? Tara, please continue.
Thank you. So, yes, so you need to even know that it's happening first and foremost, and then you've got to like allow your body and your mind to kind of just like chill and take a break. And so sometimes you actually have to take a break to do that, you know? So if you can do that in the same room, great. If you can't, it's okay to, you know, take separate corners, so to speak, and do what you need to do. But if you do that, it's so important that you name a follow-up time. And then, like, let's say, you know, we get into an argument and you're ready to talk and I'm not. You know, if one of us is not ready, then it both need to be ready.
So if the other person's lid is flipped, you're kind of giving them grace to say, hey, when you get your lid back.
Yes, absolutely. Go put your lid back on and then we'll talk.
And that's probably helpful language.
It is.
I bet. So,
yes. Don't tell your wife to put her lid back on. Okay. But if I say like, hey, I can't talk about this right now. Like, I'll follow up with you in 30 minutes. You know, if in 30 minutes I'm still not ready, okay, but I need to come back to you and say like, hey, I need a little more time, because otherwise we're stonewalling, and that's a whole nother ball game, So take your time, relax. My favorite, and I believe the best way to do that, is to be rational, focus on the facts, take deep breaths. Breath communicates with our brains in a very clear and healthy way that like, you're safe, things are okay, calm down naturally. And so to do that is very vital. And so you may not feel like totally like the most rational human being or ready to have this talk when you go to have it, but if you do those things to calm down, you're at least going to be more reciprocal, hopefully slower to speak, and this guy is more in charge than he was,
So if you're starting to feel that way, a couple things, you may need a break. Start to breathe a little bit more, start to pray probably would be a decent thing, but you're just really doing all that you can to realize, to calm back down a little bit and get those emotions to be, I don't know if suppressed is the right word, but just kind of.
Suppressed is not.
Okay.
We want to.
I guess I'm not the therapist.
You want to just let them lose their intensity.
Okay.
Because they're still going to be there, and we don't want to suppress them, so we're not avoiding them or ignoring them or numbing out.
You just want to take the edge off so that it's not so extreme in those emotions. Because what happens when you're in those heightened emotional states, you probably start saying like statements that are really going to be harmful, and it does more damage to that other person, then starts to flip their lid again, and it's just kind of a continual mess.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, just I think the most important part of this too is just keeping as much as you can in those moments, because it's hard because you're not getting along, or there's conflict or tension, but is to try to be as transparent in your communication as you can, and follow up. And if you're not ready, you're not ready, but like let them know that, And so some people don't even want to pray when they're like, and so if that's you, but you like really know like, I need to meet with Jesus right now, turn on some worship music and just like let it wash over you and through you. I mean, we're trying to just lower everything and just kind of ride the wave, so then we can go out and try to be as mindful and productive in our communication with our spouse.
So at home, you and Daniel are having a conflict, having something. So what are some things that you typically do to calm yourself down so you can not be treating him like garbajo? I think that's the Spanish word for garbage.
That is not. It's basura.
I know, I'm sorry.
But, I never flip my lid, so this is hard.
Never,
but hypothetically,
yes,
this is what I do.
That's what I meant.
So for me, it's very important that I don't turn to sarcasm, because I think it's brilliant. He does not. A lot of people don't.
Which I don't understand.
Don't love it. I know, right?
It makes no sense.
But I need to tone down my sarcasm. I watch my body language. I have a tendency to either like close off, or if we're really in it, I might even like be more aggressive and like, being louder, or just showing with my body that like, I'm not okay with this. And
I'm going to be in charge right here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I oftentimes do the opposite. This sounds maybe weird, but I do the opposite of what I want to do in those moments once I've recognized like, hey, this is happening. So like if I want to leave the room, but I'm also not at a place where I'm super elevated and I need to take a break, I'll stay. I'll sit down, I'll uncross my arms. I'm showing like, hey, I'm here, let's talk. If I am closed off and like, I just want to get away from it, or just kind of even like get small and protect myself, then again, watch your body language. Like, I want to talk about this, but like, make sure he's okay, and like not his volume and his intensity is not turned up. Make sure he doesn't need a break, and then we do it. And so it takes practice. It takes time. A lot of times it cannot get resolved in one conversation, and that's okay. And I think a lot of people obviously want it to because it's uncomfortable, but a lot of things can't get resolved in one setting, and I don't think this is any different.
But I think really what you're trying to help us understand is that when we feel those moments that we are flipping the lid, that we're kind of out of control emotionally, those are moments that are not going to be productive in conflict, and we've gone into this weird state of almost attack and survival, and we've got to find some way to back off a little bit, calm ourselves down, and get to the spot where we can think about actually listening to this other person, gaining their perspective, all the tips and tricks that we talk about all the time for marriage. But if we're in this emotional spot,
right, then
we're never going to get there, and so we just have to somehow get ourselves to calm down. And again, it kind of goes back to what we talk about a lot. we can't control that another person's doing that. We just have to focus on ourselves and get myself in the best possible spot so that I don't treat this person.
Right. Stay in your lane. We say that all the time. And like, it's so important because especially in a conflict, if you think you're right and they're wrong, you're going to want to point that out. And that's not helpful.
No.
And so you need to do whatever you need to do to get in a good spot, get in a good headspace, make sure your heart attitude is okay. And they need to be doing the same. And if both parties are doing that,
then you can have
golden.
productive conversation because you can actually hear someone's perspective and not just be fighting for yourself or saying, well, yeah, but, or whatever. Right. You're just actually trying to hear what that other person's saying.
You're actually actively listening.
And realizing that person's not an enemy, not something where you're being attacked, but this person ultimately is supposed to be someone on your side that you guys are going after the same goal together.
Y'all might even be saying the same thing or wanting the same thing, but you're going about it differently. And if people would chill, we could maybe even see that more clearly.
Yeah. Okay. So conflict is now avoided in your home because you know when you're flipping your lid, because just remember the turkey. Oh, wait, it's not the turkey, it's the brain. And so, go from there. I thought I was going to say something funny, but there's nothing else there to say. So, but we would like to invite you guys to go to iTunes or wherever, download our podcast and listen to that, and hopefully that'll help your marriage. But thank you guys for being here, and maybe we all can avoid flipping our lids.
Or at least do it less often.
At least do it less often. So again, the therapist. Do you see how she kind of checks me on everything? She thinks she's better than me. Thank you guys for being here.
Oh my gosh.